Hello and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Pod, brought to you by SodaStick, sodastick.com. Use that code KFAN to get free shipping. Hi, Pat.
Hi, Brandon. How are you?
How you doing? Doing
Good.
well. Yeah,
Good.
doing well. We're one of these days the temperature will get cold enough so I can actually set up the outdoor rink.
I know, right? You're so excited for that, and it's beautiful out.
And yeah, it's gonna get up to 50 degrees today. So we're still maybe 10, 14 days away from being able to play outside. But we had Judd Brackett, the director of amateur scouting, on before the draft, and I got a lot of response after the draft saying, "Hey, we'd like to hear his opinion now that we actually selected players to see what he thinks about them." So we decided to invite Judd back to the podcast. Judd, really appreciate your time for a second time. And if you recall, when we had you on before the draft, I gave you a scenario of a guy I wanted, Marco Rossi, that how do you figure out how other teams view him, whether you should move up in the draft to get him, whether you should stay, a guy like him. You ended up taking him. So now that you look back at it, go back to actually in the draft process there, while the draft's going on, where you pick 4, pick 5, pick 6. How do you know whether you should move up and go get a guy like him or whether to stay at 9? What was kind of the thought process as we were going through the first round of that draft?
Well, for us, I mean, we certainly, going back to being with you guys the first time, Marco was someone that we, that had high regard for and we're targeting all along. But in terms of strategy, it's a bit of a game of poker, a game of chess. So even chicken at times, we thought maybe the first 2-3 players, we had a good idea where they would go. And then there'd be some runway between 4 and 9 that could cause us some issues to not get the player. But we worked the phones, or I should say, Bill did. He was excellent. He was very active, giving us opportunities. And at the end of the day, we sat still and we had a good gut feel that that he might be there and was, and we were very fortunate. And at this point, certainly very, very happy with the selection too.
How nerve-wracking was it when it got to 6 and then to 7, and you're looking at your list, and I'm sure you had a backup plan in case he was taken. But what were those minutes like when you were waiting to select?
Yeah, and it goes to we put a list together, and the job's never done, right? As
Right.
Picks are being made, we're still having some discussions, and we're still working and still evaluating. And that goes to any other player that maybe isn't being selected. So, are we comfortable with 2 players here? Are we comfortable with 3 players here? That goes into the decision-making process too. And, I can certainly tell you at 8, when they let off from the Ottawa 67s, there was great pause in our room. But, we're obviously, in hindsight, 2020, I still think we're very happy with how everything played out.
Boy, it just seemed to me, I mean, looking at the players picked, not only from for your team, but throughout the whole, it was a pretty good draft, wasn't it? A lot of really good players.
Absolutely, and I think that's part of what made us comfortable staying where we were is the depth of the draft, of the quality of players that, we weren't dropping into, a second tier. We still felt we were an elite company at 9, and that speaks to the quality of the players in the draft and the overall, quality for the 20 draft. And having a little extra time to watch players, I think, helped everybody this year too.
Yeah, I'm sure the fact that Winnipeg's probably saying the same thing. Hey, we're happy to have Cole Perfetti fall to us, and Nashville's probably saying, hey, we're happy to have the Russian goalie fall to us. So that probably made it a little bit easier for you guys to stay at 9. Well, let's talk specifically about Rossi then as a player. What was it about him that intrigued you?
For us, he was the total package. It was the player. It was the 200-foot player, the skill, the compete level, and and I think Minnesota fans have gotten a taste in the interviews, the character too. How driven he is, how focused he is. He's got a plan. He knows how he wants to achieve it. So we don't just think he's a special player. We think he's a special person and going to be a real foundation core piece for us.
How do the statement right now is, can he make the team right out of the gate? When evaluating and drafting a player like that, especially at number 9, how much input are you giving to Bill Guerin as to whether, this is a guy who could step into the National Hockey League right out of the gate?
It's certainly part of the discussion. We try to frame every player in the best that we can in terms of their projection, their timeline, what their high ceiling is, what their floor is. So we try to, we really try to box players into the type of player that we see them developing into being, and timeline is part of that. But it's also not a prerequisite, right? I think for us as scouts, we want Marco to be the most prepared when he does arrive to be the best player he can be. So if that's this year, that's fantastic. I think that's, but if it's 2 years, that's okay too, as long as he's continued to develop and he's going to be the player that we think he can be. We have to give him those resources. And if it's 1 year, 2 years, if it's this year, the timeline, he's going to determine that with his play.
I think we've talked about this before, and I probably asked you and probably didn't word it correctly, but when you look at, let's just call it the top 10 guys, they're all really, really good players, maybe top 20, maybe top 30, whatever. But how much of it is the maturity level of a player, because it's more than just how good they are on the ice, but the maturity level and adapting in terms of whether a guy is ready or not.
It's really important, and in terms of, and maturity can come in different forms. It doesn't always have to be in the body too. It can be in the mind and the mental preparation and how you're going to achieve that. Some guys at 17 or 18 still are underdeveloped physically, but they may still have a strong path and have signs of resiliency and high character. They're going to help them. So maturity matters and approach matters and having face some adversity helps along the way too, and challenges. Those are, seeing how kids respond at a young age. It's not going to be easy getting there. So you're going to be challenged, you're going to be pushed, and we want to know that they're going to respond appropriately.
Okay. Go ahead, Brandon.
I was just say on Marco, playing in Europe, I know he had some COVID issues there for a little bit, so it's probably thrown off his season a little bit. But playing against grown men, have you been able to see any tape of him over there and how he's looked?
Just early. It's been limited. It was the game I watching him line up against Joe Thornton is interesting. But you see him, like he takes it's right. Digging in on a faceoff. Like he's not there to acquiesce to Joe Thornton, and it's not any disrespect. But he wants to win that draw, and he wants to start making his mark. As a pro. So it's awesome watching him play. He plays with so much conviction. And I think that's also, for us when we were evaluating, despite the size, we felt that this was someone who played everywhere he needed to in the rink and plays on the inside and has hard skill and is, is convicted in how he plays. So we feel his game will translate. And that's why you start seeing it now at this age.
Yeah. And if there is a silver lining to this COVID problem, he's playing in a really, really good league, which you certainly know that. And, guys that are older and boy, what a way to get ready to play in the National Hockey League and, playing in the Swiss League.
Absolutely. And I think Marco has, from the get-go has always been about challenging himself. Obviously the travel from Austria into Switzerland as a young player, the commitment to go find better hockey, to come over to the OHL, and then right out of the gate, wanted to turn pro, play against men. So, it speaks to his mindset too, that he wants to play against the best, because I think in the end he wants to be the best. And if the best version of himself is going to be playing against men and playing against, more accomplished players is going to make him more prepared when he gets here.
Another one of your draft picks that's playing against some good players would be, and forgive me when I butcher this name, but Merit Kusnedinov, who's been playing a little bit in the KHL, which is impressive at his age. Before we talk specifically about the player, back to draft night, because you guys didn't have that pick originally. You got that via the Nashville trade with the Cunnin-Bonino trade. I have to imagine that's not a trade that just comes out of nowhere with a minute before the pick, right? I'm assuming the framework of that trade is done ahead of time. So is that trade dependent on a guy like Kusnedinov being there? Were there multiple players? Did you have an idea you're going to make this trade regardless for this pick? How does all that come together before you make that draft pick?
Well, from our end, from the scouting end, we always have to be ready to pick. it doesn't matter. You can go into a draft with multiple picks or less picks, and something changes. So you always have to be prepared. Your list has to be in order. The discussions always have to take place about if this player is available, where are we comfortable? Murat was someone that we spoke very highly about. We love his speed. We love the energy he plays with, the two-way. You see him in the KHL playing very responsible defensively. When you see him in his age group, he's far more creative offensively. We see the two-way in his game, and we believe that offense will keep on coming. But in terms of strategy, we have to be ready to pick whenever the time comes. So if the framework of a deal is in place, we have to be prepared. And even if it's a last minute thing, we still have to be prepared. That's our job. And it may help management make a decision if we feel there's certain strengths or weaknesses in a draft, right? We still felt, Murat at that point was tremendous value. And for us, we thought that was a smart move.
Okay, Judd, here we go. In every sport, when a player is picked, we hear from management, we were shocked that this player was still available. Looking at the picks that you made, were you, I don't want to say shocked, but say, wow, this kid is still available and we get a chance to draft him?
Yeah, I mean, I think we hit on it earlier too. This was a strong draft, and there was depth to it too. So,
Yep.
I think it's less shock and more, speaking to the quality of the players and teams having opportunities to go in different directions as a result, whether it be goaltending, defense, whatever. Maybe they looked at team needs. But I will say we were very pleased. We were pleasantly surprised at players being available, and time will tell if we had it right. But
anyone in particular
on draft day, we were definitely pleased.
Now, with your role, are you strictly looking ahead to next year's draft, or do you keep tabs on the current Wild prospects? And I asked that, and I know you didn't draft these guys, but there's 4 guys in Boston College, including Matthew Boldy, who was a first-round pick in the organization. You got Kovanov in Russia, Adam Beckman, who did very well in the WHL. Do you follow around any of those guys at all, or are you strictly looking for next year's crop?
I mean, our focus is certainly the 21 draft, but it's also in the nature we're still in the ranks and watching our players and following them. For me, a Boston guy, there's we got quite a few players in Hockey East, at UConn and BC and UVM. So I'm always paying attention. The BC guys are off to a tremendous start.
Yeah, they're good.
I mean, unfortunately, we're not able to get into the rink right now, so it's TV and video. But we're always tracking, as are the development staff and management too. But if we see anything, we certainly report back, and any progressions or anything that we're seeing in their game that is helpful in their evaluations. So our focus is definitely shifted, but we definitely don't lose any attention on them. That's for sure.
Well, I would think so, because I mean, these are the guys that you're in charge of. I mean, you drafted. You're and obviously you want them to succeed and know that you're doing your job.
Well, Pat looks like he froze on us here, but that's okay.
Oh, did I? I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay.
Sorry.
Well, let me ask you a question, Judd. We were talking about this a little bit before we got on the podcast. How challenging is it going to be for you making those selections next year, whenever the draft is?
Yeah.
Just based off of Minnesota High School League here in Minnesota hasn't started yet. I don't know if the OHL is still not planning on having body checking. I haven't followed that story in a while. But just you have certain leagues that are delayed or canceled. You can't get into rinks. How much different is this going to be? And do you expect maybe more wild cards to happen at next year's draft?
Absolutely. This is unprecedented. I mean, we're all going through it in our personal lives and professional lives, and scouting is no different. There's leagues that are on pause. The OHL is set for a February start, and the Western Hockey League is aiming for January, with some discussions of maybe pushing back to the end of January. The Quebec League is on pause right now. And the borders are closed. So for me, we're very reliant on video. We're fortunate we have very good resources. We do have video available to us, and and we still have our connections and communication with coaches, but it's not the same as being in the rink and getting live viewing. So These are challenging times, and it's unique for me too. I still came in July, and I've yet to meet and be in person with many of the scouting staff. So we're doing it by Zoom and phone calls and emails and texts, and the communication lines are open and great, but it's not the same. But
Right.
To your point, I do think that if you're able to find the information and trust and have good work done in the areas, there will be some wild cards and maybe some opportunities as well.
So will you not be able to go to the World Junior Championships?
There are no scout, only media.
Only media. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Can you give us your official prediction on the World Junior, since I'm assuming you keep tabs on a lot of these players?
Honestly, right now, my prediction is it's too open. I mean, we're losing players, and coaches are testing positive, and players. So the roster compositions, I think, are very much in question at this point. I certainly like the U.S.'s chances. Canada, with the sort of Russia, Sweden, these guys have some strong teams, but they're losing important players and even coaches at this point. So it's a little unpredictable.
I like Austria with Marco Rossi is what I like.
Of course,
I like it. I like it.
Judd, really appreciate your time. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Maybe in person eventually.
Yeah.
Awesome. I can't wait.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks, Judd.
Bye, guys.
Judd Brackett, who is the director of amateur scouting for the Minnesota Wild. And I'd love to let you know about the sponsor of Beyond the Pod, of course. That would be SodaStick. It's the perfect time to go to sodastick.com because they have the best stocking stuffers if you want original Minnesota sports inspired goods. All of their apparel is screen printed here in Minnesota on super soft, super comfy shirts and hoodies. I've even seen their cool socks that you can put in stocking stuffers. You will absolutely love it. And we're going to hook you up with free shipping on your next order. So use the code KFAN for free shipping. That is sodastick.com, original Minnesota sports inspired goods. Use the code KFAN for free shipping. You might want to do that since we're 16 days away from Christmas. Pat, let's begin with the Gopher hockey team first. I know people listening to this podcast, the Gophers played last night against Michigan. They're also going to play tonight. So if someone's listening to this podcast a day or two from now, we're only talking after the first game against Michigan, in which they won that game 3-1. And they're now 7-0, Pat. And from watching this team, I'm not going to act like they're just the perfect hockey team.
No.
But I would also say I think they're kind of a flawless hockey team. I don't know if there's a spot where you could say that's a weakness on that team, right? I mean, goalie's good.
Yep.
Defensemen, even though they were without three of them last night, good. Yep. Forwards, all the way up through the lineup. It seems like they have different guys scoring every single night. Special teams, good. They win face-offs. It seems like they can kind of win any type of way. They can score on the rush. They can score from in tight, from a foot away. It just seems like they're just an all-around solid hockey team.
I think their D are playing just fantastic, and the top three were obviously with the U.S. junior team. They're out. What I like about this team, and you and I've talked about this before, is when a team has layer after layer, and you look at their top four centers, and maybe not great players, but really, really solid players. And that's what they have kind of throughout their whole lineup. And Scott Reedy's been really, really good and probably their best forward. And Ben Myers, when you have those two guys up the middle, it really helps your team a lot. And they're playing with a lot of confidence now. And, they feel like they can go anywhere and win. And when you have that feeling, and that sway, it goes a long way. And right now they're playing good as anybody in the country.
And you followed Bob Motzko teams at St. Cloud much longer than I have. Clearly, this team is talented up and down the lineup. Yep. But to me, I love that they're structured in terms of not giving up, not making huge mistakes, not having defensive meltdowns. They're structured, but they also have a little bit of freedom. You can tell a lot of the plays when they're coming across the blue line, like they're making creative type of plays. So I feel like there's a good balance between structure of not making mistakes, but also having the freedom to kind of try to make plays.
Yeah, Bob likes to be an offensive coach. And that's why, he said, hey, we got guys coming. We have guys coming. And they came in the form of a Kester, a Lacombe, a Johnson. Kind of reminds me back in the day when and I mentioned this before, when Nate Schmidt, Mikey Riley were, manning the D for Minnesota. And even going back to when Bob was an assistant and he brought in Paul Martin and Jordan Leopold and Keith Ballard, all offensive guys that can also defend, but that's Bob's style of play. And, you get the puck out of your zone and then you let your forwards do the work up front. It's a pretty good combination. He had the same type of defenseman when he coached at St. Cloud State. And, the formulas work for him. So he's got him off to a good start. And I should mention also, Brandon, the state of Minnesota with St. Cloud undefeated, UMD undefeated thus far. It's been really a really good start, and good for those teams.
Well, and I made a tweet the other day, and the pairwise rankings really don't make any sense this year because you're not going to have interconference play, right?
They're getting rid of the pairwise rankings this year,
and they should, because if you're in the Big Ten, you're not playing anyone from the NCHC.
Right.
But if you want to go off the pairwise rankings, as I mentioned, St. Cloud, UMD, Gophers, Mankato, all are in the top. All are in the top 7. You've got the Boston College team that I just mentioned that has 4 Minnesota Wild players, including Matthew Boldy, the first-round pick, that are off to a great start. Bowling Green was in the top 7. Their head coach, Ty Eidner, is from Minnesota. He coached at Brainerd. Rosemont, was an assistant for a couple of those Eden Prairie State Championship teams. And even North Dakota, which is right next to us, is just littered with Minnesota connections.
We are doing something right in the state of Minnesota when it comes to developing players, developing coaches. Just a terrific job. And like I've mentioned before, you look at Tom Serratori at Bemidji, Mike Hastings at Mankato, Scott Sandlin at UMD, Bob Motzko here, all Minnesota guys. And it's and Brett Larson from St. Cloud, a UMD kid. Just a terrific job of coaching that we have here in the state.
And we got another team coming next year, Pat.
We do.
St. Thomas.
Hey, and watch out for them. We've discussed it. It's going to be a gold mine. They will build that program up a lot faster than I think people think.
I would agree with you. I do know there are some big time coaches that want that position. So it's going to
be a coveted job.
It is. It's in the Twin Cities. In terms of finding hockey players in the country, there's no better spot than right in the Twin Cities. You're gonna have a new rink. Just great
resources.
Yep, great place, great campus, great place to recruit. They got me in as an alum, which I think is a huge draw for a lot of players.
They're lucky. Yeah, they're lucky. They can lean on you. You're right here.
Back to the Gophers. Let's talk individually about some of the players. Okay. I feel like Ben Myers kind of slides under the radar a little bit, but 3 points last night. I thought a great goal, and great job by his line mates to crash the net and to draw attention. But just the patience he had on that play. Me, I sometimes think faceoffs are overrated, but when a guy is consistently winning at the rate that he is, I do think that is an advantage for your team. He's a great skater. He's got some speed. He's just a good player.
Yeah, he's not gonna wow you because he does all of the little things too. I mean, he'll win a battle in the corner. He is that consummate 200-foot player, but still has the ability to produce offensively. And Bob raves about him. He told me a year ago, Ben Myers, could be our best forward. He will be our best forward. And he's he just adds so much to your team. And when you watch games, last 30 seconds of a game, he's going to be out there, whether on the wing or taking a draw or whatever the case may be. That's how much confidence the staff has in him. And he's a little bit older And so his maturity level is up there. And boy, I know for a fact teams wanted. He's a free agent. Teams wanted to sign him at the end of last year. Okay, just to make sure they got him before another team ups the ante or whatever the case may be. So he's a highly coveted player.
One other player, Sampo Ranta, a guy who clearly has elite speed and can score on the rush. And for him, he's has such a big frame. You'd like to see him get some of those dirty goals.
Yes,
from in tight, and he got one of those last night, a play in which just I don't know how many Gophers would have been able to score that goal just because he's got the size and the strength to be able to somehow get that thing in the net.
Here's how I will describe Sampo. Okay, let's say you're driving your car, right, down the highway, and there's an exit sign, right? Well, sometimes he takes the wrong exit, and
you talking about my wife or Sampo Ranta?
Yeah, I'm talking about Sampo Ranta.
Okay.
This kid has enormous amounts of talent,
physical skills,
physical skills, and you're exactly right about getting some of those dirty goals. Sometimes he just kind of peels off and he circles and he gets in the corner and he doesn't get in the right spots. He's learning. He's much improved from a year ago. And once he learns a little bit more about where to be and where to get to and navigate the game a little bit better, there's no reason why he cannot play at the next level.
All right, let's transition over to the Minnesota Wild news that broke on Friday night that Matt Zuccarello had surgery on his right arm back in November. He broke that same arm 2 seasons ago back in Dallas. So he's going to miss the start of the season. No time frame for return. When I saw the story, there was 2 things that popped to my mind because Michael Russo also wrote that it was kind of bothering him last year. Which one, I was encouraged that maybe he was playing injured last year, and that had something to do with his poor performance because he only had 37 points in 65 games. A little weary as to why we waited till November to have surgery on this instead of maybe September. But a guy that I never thought he was going to be the first line player that we slotted him in.
Yep.
But also I thought when they signed him, he was better than what we saw last year. And whenever he does come back, hopefully it had something to do with the arm injury and not his age.
I'm going to pull it back a little bit, okay? Because right now, all of the Wild fans are down on him. And they have a reason to be, okay? He got a big deal, and he got a long-term deal. And those two...
And a no-move clause, which I think...
And a no-move. And automatically, that triggers people.
Yep.
I get it. I'm not thrilled with the contract. I don't think, anybody really is, okay? But we can't forget is a pretty good player. Did not have a good year last year.
No.
Is it a blow to the organization? I don't know how long he's going to be out, but you've got that contract tied up. I was hoping, and it still am hoping, that when he does come back, we can see the type of player that he was, right? And so we're just going to have to wait and see. I'm not going to call it a big a blow, but it certainly hurts. I think what they're thinking going into the season.
Well, the season is supposed to start January 13th. It sounds like they'll play less than 60 games. I think maybe like 58 games, something like that. Because we don't have the information on how long he's out.
Yep.
Whether it's maybe he's out a couple weeks, a month to start the season,
maybe up a spot, right?
maybe he misses the year. That opens up a spot. So here's what I'm going to suggest to you, Pat, and I'm going to say I don't know the financials of this, and it's most likely not possible.
I know where you're going.
It's most likely not possible to do because of salary cap and financials.
Yep.
But if there is a way to do it, depending on what this guy's asking, Mikael Granlund is still on the market. He's still a free agent. What, do you think I was going in a different direction?
Yeah.
What do you think I was going to say?
Mike Hoffman.
Oh, well, yeah, he's pretty good too.
Yeah.
But I've got a special place in my heart for Mikael Granlund.
Yep.
They're both him and Zuccarello are a little bit comparable. They're both smaller, both left-handed. So you would have kind of the same type of player. If there's any way to give him like a cheap 1-year prove it deal. Hey, you come here, you play for us, you get your stats back up, and then you go back out on the market next year. If it could work financially, I'm interested in Mikael Granlund.
I'm going to ask you this, since we're talking, former Minnesota Wild players. If you had a choice between Erik Haula, who can play left wing, he did in college a little bit, or Mikael Granlund, which one would you take?
I would. Well, my heart is still with Mikael Granlund just because I liked him better. I'm a little biased. I like the way he played.
No, that's fine.
My thing with Haula, I like Haula as a center.
Okay.
Where does Haula slot if he's here? Right, because of our void at the center position.
He'd have to play wing.
Well, no, he doesn't necessarily have to play wing, but if he plays center, he's going to be one of your top 2 centers here. I've never been all in on Erik Haula as a number 1 center or number 2 center. If he's my number 3 center, I'm happy. I'm good to go.
Okay.
But given we don't really have those top 2 slotted guys, now you're moving up into a lineup where I think he's just destined to not succeed in that spot. I would just think it would be kind of weird to bring in Erik Haula.
Yeah. I said there would be one more move, or my prediction, without knowledge of talking to anybody in the organization. I now with what's happened with Zuccarello, I most definitely think there will be another move made to strengthen that forward position before they get going. Maybe I'm wrong, because we are now a month away from games supposedly starting, but I'd love to see him make another move.
Yeah, we'll see if they do. One other thing before we let you go, Pat. We talked with Judd about the World Championships and World Juniors, and we'll probably talk more about this in the next episode or 2 as we lead up to the official tournament beginning right at Christmas. But I did see some guys dropping out. Jack Hughes, who was signed who was drafted right before Marco Rossi by the New Jersey Devils, will not play. Alex Lafreniere for the New York Rangers, the number 1 overall pick in the draft, will not play in the World Junior Championships. I'm assuming more will drop off as we go along here. The Wild, as of now, are going to let Marco Rossi play for Austria. And that was going to be my point. I understand Lafreniere because he's going to play year 1 for the Rangers. Jack Hughes for the Devils, he's a good player. He's a good offensive player. I just don't know if he's like a sure thing going to start year 1. It just seems odd to me that you wouldn't let him play in the World Juniors. And I'm glad the Wild have made the decision. Hey, let's let Rossi go dominate guys and play in a tournament that he's probably dreamed his entire life of playing in, and give him that chance.
This tournament is one of the best tournaments in the world ever. Okay. If I'm a general manager and I have a young kid that needs more experience, I let him play. I just flat out let him play. I think too many of these organizations are fearful of injury. And if you're fearful of injury, well, then
you're in the wrong business.
You're in the wrong business. And I think Jack Hughes needs to play. He didn't light it up in New Jersey for whatever reasons. One of them being he's really young and hasn't matured yet. And so I think putting him in a situation again where he's going to face really, really good competition, probably play against some players that are better than him. I think it only helps his development. And so I think all these kids should be allowed to play, in this tournament.
I just realized I screwed up. I confused Jack Hughes with the Devils' first-round draft pick this year, so I was wrong on my previous statement. But one final topic I lied to you about before we go, because we had someone tweet us. Dave Johnson at Davey6568 says, discussion topic: average age of college hockey versus every other sport. I would like to see players getting 5 years after they graduate high school to complete college eligibility. Obviously, Pat, college hockey has completely changed in the last 10, 15 years to kind of an older game where you have 23, 24-year-olds, playing and dominating. And hence that's kind of created parity, I would say, across all of college hockey. Would you change any rules in terms of the age? Maybe it's just looking back at the glory days of Gopher hockey, but I kind of miss having just 18 to 22-year-olds play each other. The whole concept of let's bring in 23, 24, 25-year-olds. And I don't know if there's really a way you can change that. But I do kind of like the older version of college hockey when it was 18 to 22.
Yeah, well, back in the glory days, the top high school players went right into college and played.
Yep.
And then the other guys needed an extra year and they went there. That system worked good. It's changed. And the game has changed from the 60s to the 70s, 80s, 90s to where we are today. So I don't have an answer. I don't know. It seems to be working. It certainly helps. Look at Minnesota State. Their philosophy is we're not going to get the top Minnesota high school players. They're going to either go to Minnesota, Wisconsin, North Dakota, but wherever, the bigger schools. So they recruit kids that they think can play, but they need more time, and they send them for 2 years, and that has worked for them. They're a perennial team every year. Yes, they are older. And so you understand that, and you're right, Brandon. It creates the parity throughout college hockey. Now, if you say, well, you're on the clock, you got 5 years. I don't know how fair that is to the kid.
Yeah.
So I don't have the answer. I'm sure a lot of people much smarter than me would have a solution, but I think it's working okay right now. And I don't foresee any changes.
All right, Pat, no changes from next week. I will invite you back on to the Beyond the Pod podcast.
Thank you. I look forward to it. Have a great week.
All right. Thanks, Pat. Appreciate it. He's Pat Micheletti, my co-host on Wild Fan Line, also a former Golden Gopher. Great. I'm Brandon Mileski. This has been another episode of Beyond the Pod, brought to you by Soda Stick. Make sure you go to sodastick.com right now. Use the code KFN for free shipping. Lots of great Christmas giving gifts that you can stuff in those stockings for your loved ones. Thanks again for listening and watching to another episode of Beyond the Pod. Talk to you next week. Bye.